Hi guys, we've been asked to make a video about the basics of Photoshop. So I'm just going to go through a few things that I do when I'm editing any of my photographs. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm going to take the opportunity to show you how I process an image, and if people like what we do, we can do other videos about other topics. So I'm going to start off with this bird image that I've taken. It's a little greenfinch, and as you can see, there's lots of things wrong with this. It's not straight, it's dark, it's not very much colour to it at all. But I like it because when you look at the bird itself, it's got a great expression. So it's definitely worth taking the time to process this properly. Okay, so when I get an image like this, the first thing I tend to do is crop the image first and foremost, and I'll do that in a couple of different ways. Firstly, I go to the top section of Photoshop over here on the left hand side, which is the tools. I'm going to use the crop tool, which is this little angular icon there. Okay, I'm just going to click that, and then what you can see, that will actually throw up the area of the crop. Now personally, and this is all a matter of choice, I like to crop in A4 so that when I print things, it's easy for me to get hold of A4 printer paper. And I like to have big images, but you can pick any size that you like. So first and foremost, we'll get this down to a size that we can work with. So first things first, I want to address the horizontal issue, and you'll see at the top of your Photoshop page, you got this little icon at the top. It's a little spirit level. If I click on that little spirit level, you can see the icon changes itself on my cursor. So the way this works is you click on a point in your image, and that can be horizontal or vertical, whichever way you want, and then you just drag it to another point where you want it to find its level and let go, and straight away that solves your horizon issues. Great when you're looking at skies and water, coastlines and the like, just to make sure that that's right. Okay, so we've got that bit right. Now we need to come in close. So I can use the cursor to drag my crop to anywhere that I think is a good place. And in this particular case, I'm going to go for something round about there. You can see the grid pattern on the crop sensor. If you like to work to the rule of thirds, this is broken down into those thirds to give you a better feel for your image. So this particular one is kind of nice about there, little bit of empty space over to the right, but that's okay. I'm sure that'll look fine in the finished product. When I'm ready, the icons across the top, I'm just going to click this little tick button, and that will edit that picture to that size. Okay, use the little magnifying glass then and hit the icon to fit the screen, so I can now see what I'm working to. Okay, so now we've got our image. This is a kind of a nice crop. We might change that again later, but just for now, it gives us something to work to. So the first thing I do when I'm processing any of my images, I keep it really simple. So over on our adjustment panel, there's lots of different icons you can see, and they all have different functions. For this first video lesson, we're going to keep this quite simple. So I'm only going to use 2 or 3 of these particular icons, the ones I use all the time. So the first thing I'm going to use is the levels icon. That's this icon at the top. It looks like a little graph if you like. I'm going to click on that, and what this does, it shows me a histogram. And for people who don't know how to use a histogram, it's a really useful tool. So basically everything to the left hand side of the histogram is the blacks in your image. Everything to the right is the whites. So ideally, in an ideal world, what you want is this curve, if you like, to be somewhere in the middle. That's ideally, but it doesn't always work out like that practically. So if I take the slider on the left hand side here, if I drag that to the right, that will darken the image, as you can see. If I take the slider on the left and drag it left, that makes everything brighter. And the slider in the middle is the mid-tones, so it's everything in between. So the way this works is, what you don't want in any of your images is this part of your histogram to be touching this left-hand wall. That means that it's overexposed. So what you need to do is to bring this slider in just to the point of where it starts hitting your graph on a histogram. And the same with the white. Okay, now with the white it's slightly different, because that's all a matter of taste, if you like. So I'm going to bring this one forward just a little bit, and you can just see it just starts to lighten the background. It still looks a little bit fuzzy, but that's because of the mid-tones. So in order to compensate, I'm going to take my middle slider, I'm going to take that down. So I'm going to take my mid-tones down, and I'm going to bring a white slider up. Yeah, until I'm happy with the exposure of the image. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. So that's a good starting point for us. So I would always start with the levels icon. Before you do anything else, that's the kind of thing that would make a big difference to your images right from the word go. So practice using the levels and the histogram as much as possible. So now we've got our image in some kind of a nice state regarding contrast and brightness, etc., etc. Now what I want to do is concentrate on my main subject. My main subject in this image is this little greenfinch in the middle of the page. So the next thing I would hit is the hue and saturation icon, which is this little button here on the left, and I click that button. Now with this particular button, it has a master switch, so if I was to change the saturation, it will bring all the colours up or down. But it's not very often I use the master switch, because different colours have different qualities, and I'll take them one at a time. So if I go to my red slider, it's a good starting point. There's not very much red on this at all. If anything, probably around the feet. I can't think of anywhere else. If I can jam that right up, you can see. If I throw this right up, highlights the feet, some in the wooden fence panel, and in the beak. Okay, we don't want it that bright. So what we're going to do, the thing about using these type of sliders is it's small adjustments, tiny little adjustments. That's all you need. So you bring it to the point where, yeah, you're happy. That's nice. You like that? So zoom in. Yeah. Okay. And then we're going to go to yellows. Now predominantly yellow is a colour that covers a multitude of your screen, in effect. So most of these greens that you can see in the image are actually yellow. They're not green at all. So we have to be a little bit more subtle with the yellow. If I was to crank the yellow up, you can see it affects lots of the image. But our green finch is actually yellow. So what we're going to do is we're going to take him up just a little bit. Yep, that's good. Okay, and then we're going to go through each of the colours, and we're going to go up or down, whichever what we think is best for our image. Is it better? Is it worse? Kyan's is a blue, and it's a blue normally with water or the sky. Don't have many Kyan's in that image. Blues, again, not many blues, and magentas, not many magentas there at all. Okay, so now we make a big difference to our image right from the start. The next thing I would do is the vibrancy button. So this little triangle over in the top right hand corner in your icons, that's the vibrancy channel. And Photoshop is brilliant at dictating what's important and what's not important. So if I was to hit the vibrancy, it would select the colors that would benefit most from the vibrancy. So if I crank it up just a little bit, yep, and it just gives that little sparkle. It's not the same as saturation, it's very different insofar as that it makes them stand out more. Saturation will fill with colour, and vibrancy will give it a bit of a sparkle. Okay, so we could stop there. One of the things about this image is the background and the main subject are very similar in colours. He kind of camouflages in, but I want this little guy to stand out a little bit. So what can we do? Well, this is where we get into layers, and we're going to talk about selective layers. Now, a selective layer is where I target a specific part of the image rather than the whole. So at the moment we've just been dealing with the whole. So if we change yellow, we change the yellow everywhere. If we change the green, we change the green everywhere. Now we're going to start targeting specific areas of the image. So for this particular instance, I want my little green finch to stand out. Excuse me. So what we need to do is to select just the green finch. And Photoshop is very clever at being able to identify objects. So go on back to our tool panel on the left hand side of the screen. You'll see this little icon at the top. This is your quick selection tool. Yep. If I drag this across, we have a number of different tools that we can use. The best thing I can say is to try each of them. This is my favorite, actually, the quick selection, because it does amazing things. However, Photoshop itself is very clever and it can assist in lots of ways. So once I've selected my quick selection tool, on the top of my screen you'll see this area, it says select subject. Now, if I just click select subject, Photoshop will highlight my main point of focus, and in this case is this little bird, which is brilliant. It's done a great job. If I wanted to check to make sure that everything's covered, next to select subject there is select and mask. If I click select and mask, what this does, it highlights the area that my little marching ants have covered. I'm just going to zoom in, a little zoom tool. Now what this is, masks is going to become your best friend. Masks are tremendous and it does lots of different things, but just for now we're going to talk about isolating the parts of your image. So the toolbar consists of a number of different options, so we'll only need to talk about a couple, so we'll do these as and when we need to. Okay, so you can see this one, this little brush with looks like a little hand around it. It's not a hand, it's actually it's almost like a fine adjustment tool, refining edge brush, in fact. And the way this works is it looks at your image and it gives you a cleaner edge. And when I say a cleaner edge, I don't mean a straight edge. What it does, it looks in between feathers or contrast or hair, which is great. So the way to use this is, firstly, I would make my brush bigger. And the way to make your brush tool bigger is over on your laptop or your computer. You've got some bracket keys. If you put the closed bracket, that makes the brush bigger. And if you put the open bracket, it makes it smaller. So something about this size is ideal. And then all I'm going to do, while it's set on the plus icon, is just run this tool, this brush, around the edge of this little greenfinch. When I release the brush, it then fills in the gaps around the edge. So instead of being an absolute edge, it starts following the contours of the feathers or hair, particularly good at hair. Don't be too worried about this, because these things are easy corrected later, which I'll show you. This really just gives you a bit of a head start, if you like. Okay, so that's pretty cool. There's a little bit of wood there, so I just run my cursor around there. It knows where the bird's feet are. So we take that out, and then I'm going to press OK. Right, back to our bird. So now we've gone all the way around the edge of the bird. So from this point, I can do a number of things. Now I've isolated this little greenfinch. What do I want to do? Well, let's see. Can I make him a little bit brighter? Yeah, I can make him a bit brighter. There's a number of ways we can do this. We can go back to our levels panel. We can go to our brightness. Brightness isn't the same as exposure. Exposure is a different thing altogether, but brightness actually, it's much softer and it's easier to work with. So if I just lighten our little greenfinch just a little bit, that's great. So now he's standing out a little bit more. If I wanted him to stand out even more, how would I do it? I can't make him any brighter because then he starts to look unreal. So what I do, in our little options palette, I go to layers. So what Photoshop does, it makes layers of everything. It's like an onion. It's like one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And these things we can talk about at a later date. But just for now, what we need to do is to make sure we always go back to our layer. So this is the very first one in our panel. Yeah, so this is our starting position, if you like. Everything else is what we've added on top. All the other adjustments we've added on top of the original layer. So let's go back to our original layer. And we'll go back to select. Okay. Most of the time that will go back to select, but it's not going to. So what we'll do, we'll go back and we'll select our image again, or select our subject, or greenfinch. Okay, so this time we don't want to isolate the bird. What we want to do is select everything other than the bird. So when we're in our select mode, at the moment we've selected the bird. So what we need to do is go back to select, go to inverse. Now what that does, it picks everything except the bird. Yeah, which is great. So I want my bird to pop out. So the only way I can do that now is to change the background. So I'll go back to my color adjustment panel, or hue and saturation panel. I'll go to saturation and I'll bring this down just a little bit. Yeah, and I'm going to keep this at master because I want everything to come down, not individual colours. So I'll bring everything down, not a lot. If I took it all the way down, it takes the colour out of everything and therefore becomes black and white. So you may have seen some images where you've got one predominant item being in colour, everything else is black and white. This is a really simple way how to do that. Okay, but I don't want to come down that much on this one. I just want to bring it down just enough to make my bird pop. Yeah. There's lots of things I can do from there. If I was to go back to that particular layer, go back to select and reselect, I could go to my filters. I could blur the background if I wanted. From there, if that's what I chose to do, I could then convert it, and so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just isolating our subject, and then I can make adjustments around it. I'm not going to do that on this particular case. Okay, so now we've taken the color down. If I wanted to now, I could then take the brightness down to bring that, make it pop even more, just a little bit. There you go. See, that's looking all right. Now our little bird's popped out, and it stands out from the background. It's no longer the same color, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. Now I can go back and I can now start to change the sizing of my crop if I wanted to now. Now that I'm comfortable, I'm happy with it, I can keep changing it as much or as little as I want. It's quite a nice image. So there you go. Bring the brightness up a tad across the whole thing. And there you go, that's our final image. So that's our first lesson. So just to recap, concentrate on levels for your dark tones, your light tones and your mid tones. Get them, just play with them until you're happy with the outcome. Then to your hue and saturation panel, go through each of the colours. Is it better? Is it worse? Until you're happy. Yeah, add a little bit of vibrance, so make it pop. And then if you need to bring things out a little bit more, then use your select tool and isolate parts of the image. As we go on, we'll use this a little bit more because there's lots and lots of things that you can do with that particular tool, which is great, and it'll open up a whole new world of things for you to do. I'll give you a quick example. So we use our select tool, and we'll just pick the fence. It's a good easy thing to do. Okay, we'll try and avoid the little bird's feet. We can. I'm going to go select the mask just because I need to clear those little bird's feet. Perfect. Okay. Press OK. Great. So if we wanted to, and we'll show you this at a later date, a bit more detail, and we go back and we always make sure that we go back to our main layer, as mentioned before. And we've got things where we could put in solid color, and we could have anything we want. So we wanted a blue fence. Okay, now that's not very nice, is it? It's as it is, but that's not where you leave it, of course. So from there, you would then use other tools to bring that into a better place. Yep. So you could have a blue fence. Just doing this very quickly. Okay. And as everything in Photoshop, everything can be fixed. So nothing's a disaster, if you like. So if I've gone over this feed, that's absolutely fine. I was talking about earlier, things can be sorted. You're not stuck with it. Yeah, it just takes a little bit more time. Okay, you get the idea. So that's our first video. Any questions, send them through, and we shall endeavour to answer anything you like. But that's just the basics. If that's the basics, the next time we can do other things. So if you've got anything in particular you'd like to look at, give us a shout, and we'll try and make a little video on that too. Thank you guys, and good luck, and take care.